Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about what happened this past weekend in the Overwatch League. Pretty interesting weekend, some big matches, some more tournament clinching performances. Let's talk about everything. Real quick, let's throw out my picks from this past weekend. You can see I went 10-6 overall, 1-1 in big picks. So not terrible, but definitely a bit of a surprise. I had a pretty rough outing on Sunday. 3 of my wrong picks were all on the same day. That was a rough one. Let's jump in and let's talk about what happened. Of course, Friday, my first match was the Chengdu Hunters versus Hangzhou Spark. Big pick match. Hunters were victorious in this one. The Spark don't look great. Hunters, I actually think, look like one of the top teams in this region right now. I think it's a two-horse race, honestly, between the Dynasty and the Dragons, but I think the Hunters are firmly the third best team right now. They beat the Fusion, they beat the Spark. There's really, no one else in their way. I believe that their last 2 games are the Charge and the Dynasty. The Charge and the Valiant. So their last 2 matches are going to be easy. They're going to win those 2 games. They're definitely going to get a spot in the tournament. They've won against the teams that they, if they're the third best team, they've beaten the teams they should be, and they've lost the teams that you would expect them to lose to. So I think the Hunters are in a really good spot right now. The Spark, I don't think they're, don't write them off yet. Obviously, they have a possibility of being that 4 seed in this tournament. I think that there's definitely the chance. They started off with the 3 hardest opponents being the Dynasty, the Dragons, and the Hunters. Their other 3 games, obviously they played the Valiant this weekend. The rest of their matches are definitely easier. So they could be that 4th team, but there is a match next week that'll definitely be the big one, which is their match against the Charge, to really kind of see where they're at. But Spark just not looking as good as you kind of would have hoped they would based on some of their previous performances. So unfortunate to see, but Hunters definitely kind of keeping up with some of those other top teams in the region. So Dynasty beat the LA Valiant, not really a surprise. Valiant played okay in this series, but Dynasty won 3-0. Dynasty, I think, are the best team in the region right now. They haven't dropped a map yet, including their game on Saturday. They didn't lose a map. They just look better. They look stronger right now. I think they're the better team overall. So I think Dynasty right now, definitely my pick for top team in this Eastern region. Valiant, not much to talk about there. They don't look great, so it is what it is. I mean, they just have too many issues. I don't think that they look great really on any role other than Dia on the Junker Queen. Otherwise, those look kind of average, all things considered. Moving on to the Western region, though, Atlanta Reign, big win over the London Spitfire. The Reign, of course, this was the debut for Speedily, so big weekend for them for the rest of their season is Speedily's debut. Definitely something you have to be excited for if you are a fan of the Reign, is seeing Speedily finally kind of coming to play and finally able to get to this point where he can play and have an impact, which is something that I think will be good for this team going forward. Spitfire did not look great in this matchup. They had a pretty rough weekend overall, honestly. I think it's really tough to kind of gauge where they are. I think what we saw from them last week was, I think, potentially a bit of a red herring. I think that they are not actually going to look as good for the remainder of this tournament as we maybe thought they might. They struggled quite a bit this weekend, finding any real success. They didn't win a game this weekend, which is not great for a team we felt pretty good about. I think, honestly, they just are not the team that we had imagined they were after last tournament cycle, which I think they just looked better. I think it favored the way they play better. I don't think Hottie is a bad Junker Queen by any means, but I definitely don't think he has looked as good on the hero as a number of other people have. I think that their overall performances are just not really living up to the level that you would hope from what we've seen from them so far this season, and it's not great. Reign, I think, looked a lot better. They didn't have as great of a showing at the end of the weekend, though I guess they didn't look bad. Spitfire did have a tough weekend. They did have to play 2 good teams, so it's not like they lost to weak opponents. They lost to teams that look good right now, that are playing well. It is definitely just something where you're going to have to kind of wait and see what happens as time goes on. We're going to wait and see kind of where these teams end up, all things considered. But I wasn't really impressed by the Reign in this match more than I have been. I think that speedily coming in obviously helps his team a lot, and I'll keep my eye on how the team performs now that Speedily's of age and he's able to play a lot more regularly. But going forward, to me, it's really going to be about what we see from the team as a whole, because I think Speedily is good. Kai is good, but I want to see more out of Hawk. I want to see more out of OG and Vigilante if they want to make a really deep push. But this win was a good one, and definitely one they needed to kind of help stabilize. They have a tough week next week. They're going to against the LA Gladiators, which obviously Gladiators not looked amazing so far in this tournament cycle, but you can't lose to the Gladiators if you want to have a shot at winning. So Gladiators have looked good all season, so you got to be able to beat them when they look their weakest and when you arguably are going to start looking your strongest on the speed of age. So definitely a big weekend for them next weekend, and I'm more interested in that one than this match against Spitfire. Shock beat the New York Excelsior, not a surprise. Shock, 20 wins in a row in the regular season, breaking the record from the 2019 Titans. Good for the Shock. I think it's good that they managed to get a win that was pretty big and good for their kind of legacy. But at this point in time, I don't really care about the Shock's regular season results. I want to see them do something in a tournament. They haven't won one yet. If the Gladiators don't make it, not really a major obstacle in their way, and so we'll see what happens. But definitely a good showing from them as expected. Final match on Friday was a 5-map banger between the Justice and the Titans. And the Titans finally did it. They finally got that elusive win over the Washington Justice, joining the Shock, the Valiant, the Gladiators, the Fusion, the Spitfire, and the Excelsior as teams that have beaten all other teams in the Overwatch League. So definitely good for the Titans. Big for their obvious shot at trying to make the Summer Showdown, and then even further, of course, try to make the play-ins at the end of the season. So they're in a decent position. They haven't qualified yet for the Summer Showdown, but I believe as long as they win a single map next week, they make it. And I don't think that their opponent next week is particularly hard, if I'm being honest with you. I think they play someone like Florida, or I don't remember exactly who it is they play next week. Let me double check. They play the Boston Uprising next weekend. So if they win one map against Boston, they get in. Or they get in if Florida loses a map, if Toronto beats London, if the Gladiators beat the Reign, if Washington beats Houston. So they have a lot of scenarios they get in. So they should get in. If the Fuel had 3-0'd the Mayhem, they would have gotten in. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. But good win for the Titans. And the Justice, despite the fact that they lost this game, not a bad weekend from them. Obviously close here to the Titans, but they did get a qualification for the Summer Showdown this weekend thanks to the results of Sunday. So at least in that way, the Justice, despite losing this match, they looked pretty solid, and they still are going to be playing in Toronto, which I don't think many people would have expected. I think most people probably would have been under the impression that this team was not going to have a very good tournament. Obviously, they made a bunch of changes to their roster. They, obviously got rid of most of the players on their team, all this stuff. So it's nice to see them actually make it to the tournament after all those things happening. So definitely happy for the Justice. Moving on to Saturday, Dynasty with a win over the Charge. Charge, look, I'm not going to criticize the Charge for this one too much. Let's be real, all right? The Dynasty are really, really, really good. They are, I think, the best team in this APAC region right now, as I've said. So I don't think there's, reason to be annoyed or disappointed if you're the Charge or a Charge fan. At the end of the day, it really is just a very, very, very good team that you lost to in the Dynasty. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens as time goes on, as the meta develops more. Charge look a lot better than they did before. That is not even up for real debate, I think. I think it's a very clear and interesting growth to watch for this team in particular. I'm very intrigued to kind of see where things end up for the Charge. If they can make the tournament, it's definitely possible. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens there. Spark finally get their win over a team in this meta against the Valiant. They have some winnable games the rest of the way. They have the Charge and they have the Valiant, and the Fusion as their last 2 games next weekend. So Spark could definitely still get in. That's why I think it's interesting. It's a 2-horse race between the Spark and the Charge, I think, right now, because the Fusion threw it all away this weekend. So, it is what it is. Spark definitely are not out yet, but I think that'll be the game to kind of watch next weekend. One of the biggest games of the weekend, I think the Spark should be favored to win over the Charge, but I think the Charge are playing really well right now. So I definitely don't want to write off the possibility. I think that's going to be fun. The fact that the Fusion have to play the Spark and the Charge have to play the Spark next week is really massive for potential kind of tournament appearances. And so that'll be fun to watch next weekend. APAC has some good games next weekend because Dynasty and Dragons also play next weekend. Dynasty maybe get their revenge on the Fusion after their last series. So good games in APAC next weekend. But Spark, I think, are the team to kind of watch right now, see what they do next weekend because they are fighting for that last spot. I don't think they look good enough in this meta to really compete with the Dynasty or the Dragons. But who knows? Alpha E didn't play last time, so maybe they could. Final APAC match Saturday was the Shanghai Dragon versus Philadelphia Fusion. Fusion managed to take a map, but the Dragons looked really, really good. Maybe unpopular opinion, I thought Carpe was actually the best part of the Fusion in this series. He's been getting a lot of flack this season in this meta. He got a lot of flack, especially on Sunday. I don't think Carpe's really been that bad on the Sojourn. There's a reason why he's playing. Maybe they should, maybe you can make an argument they should play Ashe more and play MN3 more, but I really don't think Carpe's been the issue for this team. I think that's kind of throwing blame just because MN3's been really, really good. I thought he was one of the best parts of this team. I think Fury's had some issues this tournament. He has not looked great. At times, he has killed himself with his ult quite a bit. I think he's a little too aggressive at times. I think that this team has more problems outside of Carpe. I don't think Carpe is a big issue for this team. That's my opinion, though. Dragons look really good, though. I think Who Are You? His Genji's really, really good. And as long as you can keep Who Are You and Genji, this Dragons team will look very good, and it'll look successful. I think that their support line's playing very well as well in this meta, which I think is nice. And Lip has been having a very nice performance. And Void is a solid Junker Queen. I don't think he's anything amazing. I don't think he's spectacular. I don't think he's like that flashy Junker Queen. But he's solid and good enough that he gets the wins you need. So all in all, I've been pretty impressed so far with the Dragons this meta. So, like to see what they can keep doing. Moving on to the Western region, Defiant with a win over the Uprising. The Defiant locked up a spot for the Summer Showdown in Toronto, of course, or Toronto, if you are from Toronto. And so that's good. Obviously, Defiant get to play in front of their home crowd. I think they're a really good team in this meta. I believe they're the 3 seed right now in the West. I think that's probably even where they are right now. I think they're the 3rd best team in the region right now. I think they look really good. I'm really curious to know what Hotba's stats are on the Junker Queen, because I think he is the type of player that you would expect to be good at the role. I think Hisu is playing very, very well. I think although Genji has looked incredible, I was pretty critical of it. I thought he didn't look great, or I was somewhat critical of it last week. I think he looks really good right now, and I think that the support line is playing very, very well as kind of expected. So I really like what the Defiant have done. I think the Defiant look very good in this meta. They definitely should be a team that has some level of favoritism going into this tournament. Maybe they don't win it, but I think that they have a home crowd advantage. I think they look good in this meta. I definitely see them as a top 3 team in this meta. Would not be surprised if they made a finals appearance in this meta, or if they made at least a top 3 finish. I think they look pretty good. Uprising, as always, there's always going to be narratives surrounding the Uprising now that they have Mag on the roster, whether or not that the team would be better with Mag in or with Punk in. I don't want to start beef with Papa Punk on Twitter or anything. He's been very vocal in particular about the Uprising not playing Punk and how the Uprising's record with Punk is significantly better than without Punk. I'm going to be real with you. The Uprising have played the Shock, the Fuel, and the Defiant as their last 3 games. The 3 best teams right now in the region, in this meta. It wouldn't have mattered if Punk was playing. They still would have lost those games. The Boston Uprising don't look good enough. I don't think tank has been the issue for this team at all this season. I'll be honest with you, right? I think Punk is very good, and he was very good when they played. Valentine and Victoria are the thing about this team that are not the best. They have their moments where they look good, and when they are good, the team plays pretty well, but they're not inconsistent. Or sorry, they are inconsistent. They're not consistent enough to be, I think, a consistently strong duo. And so to me, that's really the thing holding the Uprising back. I don't think they just have necessarily the right pieces to be a very dominant and very strong roster, and we're seeing that right now. So I don't think that it would have been much of a difference if Punk was playing. I think they still would have lost all of the maps, even with Punk, because I think that the tank role is not the problem for this roster. Gladiators finally getting a win, though, this weekend in this tournament cycle, beating the Paris Eternal. Good chunk of the Gladiators who saw space for the first time in a while. I think that I don't necessarily know if that's the route they're going to go with as we move into the full tournament. I imagine he's probably going to be in next week when they play Atlanta. I think that is the most likely thing. It makes the most sense for the team. Based on the way they played this weekend, I kind of would expect them to roll with space, considering that was the most success they've had so far in this meta was with space in. That's my kind of guess for what we've seen so far. I thought we saw some much better performances from Skewed and Funny Astro. I thought Happy Kevster played very well. It's tough to judge, though, because the Eternals still don't look very good. They had some moments that the series was not too bad, where the Gladiators looked like they were a little uncomfortable, so I don't feel great about the Gladiators still. They could make the tournament. We've talked about it, of course, at length in the community, but I honestly don't think they are really in a spot where I feel confident in them making the tournament. I think they just have not had the breadth of results that I would like to see from a team that is fighting for tournament spot. I think that they have struggled too much, and even their win against the Eternal didn't make me feel like they are significantly in a better spot. But hey, maybe working space in the roster more will help them. Maybe we see next week a better performance against the Reign. Who knows? Only time will tell. Titans versus Outlaws. Good series here. Close series, went the distance, but ultimately... actually did not go the distance. I forgot. The Outlaws actually obliterated them. It was a 3-0 for the Outlaws. I've been impressed with the Titans so far. I think the Titans still look like a good team. The Outlaws did not impress me much last weekend, but this weekend they looked a lot better. They had a much better performance this weekend. I think they've kind of figured more out what they are. Pelican played very well. Merritt played very well. I think as long as you can kind of get those good results from this team and you can kind of have what you need going forward, this team has the potential to make some good runs and potentially be a team that could upset somebody as we go forward. They had really good wins this weekend, which to me says a lot about where this team is at right now, that they are in a position where they can get some of those big wins, and you can feel like they are actually going to make a meaningful impact against some of these other teams. It's going to be interesting to kind of watch where this goes for me here for the Outlaws. Like I said, they've struggled a bit. They struggled earlier in the tournament, but they did play some good opponents this weekend, and they came out on top in both of them, so that's good for them. Titans, I'm not concerned about them yet. Obviously, they're still a team that are essentially playing better than we would have anticipated. They're a team that literally went into the stage as a 0-win team, and they're 3-2 right now. I'm not going to get too upset at the Titans if they go 3-3, or if they make the tournament. If they go 4-2 and make the tournament, that's an incredible accomplishment for a team that didn't have a single win going into this tournament cycle. Whatever they do, really, they're basically playing with house money at this point in time. Maybe they make the tournament. Maybe they make the play-ins. Who knows at this point in time? All the Titans can do is just play and try to get to that point. I think next tournament cycle is a very tough one for them because they didn't, they had a very easy one this time around, but next time around is going to be much harder. I think they have to play. I think they play Florida next tournament, which could be good for them. But I think they also have to play the Shock, potentially the Gladiators, the Fuel. They have some tough matches next tournament cycle. So they do play the Eternal again, so we'll see what happens. But Titans, you know what? I'm proud of what they've done so far, and I think that they are still in a good position to have a pretty good tournament, honestly, if they can make it in, which I think they should have no issue doing next week. Moving on to Sunday, Guangzhou Charge reverse sweep over the Philadelphia Fusion. I didn't know that the Philadelphia Fusion are actually the team that have been reverse swept the most times in the Overwatch League. Isn't that fun? Fusion, I just don't think look great. They have been consistently struggling in especially regular season matches. And, the ironic thing is that, when they don't play well in the regular season, you don't really get a shot in the postseason. So they haven't looked great this tournament cycle. I think they're not going to make it. They're a 1-win team right now. They would have to beat the Spark next week and also most likely beat the Dynasty. So I don't see that happening, if I'm being honest with you. So good luck. Fusion, I think that they just are struggling right now. I don't think this meta favors what they've been doing so far, and I just think they are not. They've been inconsistent all season, and this isn't a surprise to see them like this. I think Hunters look better than them right now, but the Fusion have the points on them, so that's really the only thing that they have going for them. They've just looked better in the postseason or these tournaments. They've gained a ton of points, and that's the only thing they really have going for them. I don't think they look particularly impressive, so not really surprising that the Charge managed to pull this one out. Shanghai Dragons versus Chengdu Hunters did go the way of the Dragons. Like I said, Dragons are the better team right now. They're a very good team. It's a team that I think is going to be one of the top teams in the region. I've said it now several times. They look better than everybody else right now with the exception of the Dynasty. They'll play next weekend. That'll kind of determine things. Hunters, number 3. They're good. I don't think they're going to do too much, but they're good. Moving on to the West, Justice beat the Spitfire. Like I said, Justice based on the results of Sunday, not necessarily just them beating the Spitfire, but also with the result of the Fuel beating the Mayhem. The Justice are going to Toronto. Amazing for the Justice. Incredibly happy for them. Based on what we've seen from them, I think they look pretty good. I think that they feel pretty comfortable. Assassin, his Genji's really good. Decay has been solid on the Sojourn. I don't think they're going to be better than a lot of other teams. I think that they're going to struggle a bit in the tournament. I don't think they're going to be a top finisher in the tournament, but they're making it, right? They're getting an extra league point, right? That's really big for them, especially if a team like Florida doesn't get in, or if London doesn't get in, right? The Justice could make up some ground in that race. They don't want to drop out of the play-in tournament. I mean, in an ideal world, they move into the top 6, don't even have to worry about the play-in tournament, but they definitely want to try to keep some of that space and pace that they've had in the standings, try to jump potentially over the Spitfire or stay above the Mayhem so they can kind of keep themselves locked in that spot. Honestly, the Justice playing well is really bad for the Titans because the Titans want as many teams as possible that they can easily jump over. Right now, for the Titans, you realistically are only going to be able to pass Boston if you want to get into the play-in tournament. That's the only team that isn't playing well enough that you could maybe pass them. Making the tournament would help a lot in that because you could get in if you had the same record. But we'll see what happens. Spitfire struggling in this tournament right now. I don't think, like I said, they look amazing. But they did play 2 good teams in the Justice and the Reign. Not amazing teams, but good teams. And they were pretty close games, both of them. The Justice Spitfire one was a 5-map series, so it is what it is. You can't win everything. I think that the Spitfire are still fine. I think they'll make the tournament. I don't see a reason why they wouldn't. But curious to kind of see what happens for the remainder of the Spitfire's tournament run and see where they are, because I think that they look okay, but I haven't been impressed. I haven't been wowed by them yet this tournament cycle. Houston Outlaws beat the Atlanta Reign. Big win for the Outlaws, stopping the reverse sweep by the Reign. Honestly, very, very good performance from the Outlaws. They are continually getting back up to that form that we saw from them when they beat the Gladiators. That's really kind of what you expect, I think, is that they should look a lot better based on what we saw from them. They were struggling. They didn't look as great. I think they're getting back into that form. If Pelican and Merrick play well, this team will look really good. Obviously, Pelican, very good friends with Piggy. Piggy leaving, I think, had an impact on Pelican's play for a bit, but I think he's kind of back. He knows what he's doing now. I wonder if, obviously, the trade of Iris was an issue, but them getting creative. I don't know where creative is. I don't know if he's with the team or not right now. Regardless, I think that the Outlaws look a lot better. I think they're getting back into the form that we expect from them, and I think that they're going to be pretty good as time goes on. I mean, they have the 3rd best record in the Western region in terms of like pure record. They're 4th in points, but they have a better record technically than the LA Gladiators. So, they're a good team. They're a solid team, and they should be expected to look pretty good as we get to the end of the season. Final match was a Dallas Fuel beating the Florida Mayhem. Florida did take a map. I did predict this would be a 3-1 because the Fuel have been unable to 3-0 anybody this tournament cycle, which is a bit concerning because even when the teams aren't necessarily that great, they still lose a bit. to some of the teams. So I am a little concerned, and we'll see what happens, and we'll see if the Fuel will struggle a bit. Next week they play the Shock. It'll be an interesting game. I think right now the Shock should be favored in that one. I don't think the Fuel have given me the confidence to think they'll dominate in a win over a really good Shock team, but we'll see what happens. It's been interesting to watch them, and I'm curious to kind of see where they go. Florida doing a lot of experimenting. They're doing a lot of different stuff. And I'm going to be real with you. I don't like it. It looks okay. Like they had some success with it on Hollywood against the Fuel. But like by and large, I just really don't like what they've shown. I think they just looked pretty mid. And I I think that they just are not. They're not impressing me in a way that I feel like I feel great and confident about this team. They're okay, but I think they're not making this tournament. Even though they play, I think next week they play New York and Paris, so they have 2 very winnable games. They could get in as a 3-win team, but I wouldn't even be surprised if they lost to New York and Paris because I think that they just don't look great right now. But they could get in literally as a 6 seed, 3-win team that just doesn't look very good. But hey, that's just my opinion. I have not been impressed with them. And I understand trying to do funky stuff, trying to break the meta because you don't like the meta necessarily, but it hasn't really worked that well. So, it is what it is. I'll check the standings up real quick so you can see them. This is, of course, the season standings. It does not take into account the tournament so far. When my picks go up on Thursday, I think I'm going to do a little bit at the end where I kind of break down what the standings would be if my picks were to come through, just to kind of discuss a little bit about that. So be on the lookout for that. That is usually the way I like to kind of talk about things when we get close to the tournament. That's it for this one. If you guys enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. Thank you all so much once again. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.